All right. Well, welcome back. It is February 11th, and I have been dealing with programming and struggling with uh, a lot of the back end coding that no one will ever see, and only developers and programmers who have pushed applications to the Android Play Store and the Apple iStore will ever know. So, this is one of the open beta releases, which I'll run through. I'm not going to run through all the features. You can see that in some of the other videos that I've already made. What I'm going to do here is kind of dig into the Wayfinder and really dig into a little bit more of kind of some of the other stuff that I've been doing. So I have finished loading up all of the 66 books of the Bible, and I have ran through and generated, I think it ended up being over 120 some odd thousand specific questions, and there's multiple translations of the different Bibles in here. All of them are public domain. I'm not violating any licensing issues there. That was a whole nother investigation I had to do to make sure that I don't want to upset anybody by using unlicensed stuff. So it's all public domain translations. Then I got in most of these chapter titles you'll see in these books. I put in or kind of roughly put in. You can still see the chapter number behind it, but as a human, I don't memorize by number for the most part. So what I wanted to do in this video is just run through kind of a real quick, real quick. As every time I say something's real quick, it ends up taking like 30 to 60 minutes. I wanted to kind of take a look at, I figure if we do, where's Isaiah? Here we go. If we look at Isaiah, and I'm a huge fan of, and if you've checked out the website, I did a whole verse study on 42:16. So I wanted to take some time and go through some of the different modules here of chapter 42 of Isaiah, starting with the scripture, and do a little bit of, instead of a showcasing of what the app can do, I wanted to just kick off my own Bible study. Part of the whole purpose of designing this app, and even if no one ever uses it, I'm designing it so that way I can better study the Bible as well as a number of other things as well, and used this as the basis for developing more educational apps moving forward. So Isaiah chapter 42 is, "Behold my servant," and I'm going to speed read through this. I'm not going to read it all to you. You're very welcome to kind of read it all on your own. I'm going to kind of just highlight bits and pieces as I read through it myself. So, verse 1, whoopie-doo. Verse 2 and 3 and 4 I really like. "He will not cry, nor lift up his voice, nor cause it to be heard in the street." So how I'm sort of seeing that is he won't make a scene. And how I read this particular chapter, and how I have read most of the other stuff in the scripture so far, oftentimes I think there is a presumption that it's always God's voice, whereas I'm more of a scientist, so I am a fan of looking at it as it is God's voice through a mediator. In this case, it's Isaiah chapter 42, and based on the biblical archaeology study that I've done so far, the full book of Isaiah seems to have been written by multiple authors, and that's the case for most of the 66 books as well, is that they're written by multiple authors. And Isaiah, I think it's like the first 30 or so chapters were written by Isaiah in like something crazy, like 8,000 BCE or something insane, which is wild to think about. This is really old stuff, which is really cool. It's ancient text. So, he will not cry nor lift up his voice nor cause it to be heard in the street. That's doesn't make scene, and it's whoever this servant is that is being spoken about. A bruised reed he will not break, a dimly burning wick he will not quench, meaning he won't destroy something already damaged. He won't hurt. He won't quench a burning wick that's dimly burning, something that's barely hanging on. He won't stop it just because. He will not fail nor be discouraged till he has set justice in the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law. Thus saith God, da 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 da. Clothe thee in righteousness, give thee cover people for light of the Gentiles, open blind eyes to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon. That is my name, da 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 da, to tell you of them. Sing a song, let the wilderness of the cities thereof lift up their voice. Da da da. And then my whole favorite part of this whole chapter is right there in chapter 16. And I will bring the blind by a way that they know not, and paths that they know not will I lead them. I will make darkness light before them, and crooked places straight. These things will I do, and I will not forsake them. The I will not forsake them is one of my absolute favorite parts of that whole verse. And the reason why is because I think we've all been there, where we have felt hopeless and in the dark, and someone who we thought was there to help us gave up on us, and we had no one else to turn to, and we were forsaken. I really hope not everyone can relate to that, at least not to my level, but there we are. Anyway, not the point. Ta-da-ta-da, hear ye deaf, look ye blind, that they may see. Very good. So, there. I've read the chapter. Good stuff. Now I'm ready to hit up the different modules. And I kind of like to go at this my own kind of deep dive way. I could go into scripture, but scripture tends to be very on point with what the scripture actually states, which sequence in 42:19 correctly continues after "who is blind but my servant," and the reference button down will show you the actual verse. "Who is blind but my servant, or deaf as my messenger that I send? Who is blind as he that is at peace with me, and blind as Jehovah's servant?" Who is blind but my servant? What is the answer? "Or deaf as my messenger," or deaf, which is all at the beginning, "as my messenger, that I send, call, choose, or that I servant that I send." Ooh, it's a messenger that I send. Dink. The explanation is pretty clear. In the scripture module, it will state exactly what's going on there, but it will also point out how the other ones are slightly different. And the scripture module is designed for individuals who really want to know the scripture for what it states. So I send, I call, I choose, very similar, but they're just one words off. And then as my servant versus my messenger, similar statement, but still different. So that's that module, which I'm not going to run through all that. That's kind of crazy. There's 17 questions in there. The scripture module, I designed it so that I do my best to cover every verse at least once within that chapter. Foundations, Let's say in Isaiah 42:5, how is God Jehovah explicitly identified before mentioning his gift of breath and spirit? I don't know. Let's see. Thus saith God Jehovah, he that created the heavens and stretched them forth, he that spread abroad the earth and that which cometh out of it, he that giveth breath unto the people upon it and spirit to them that walk therein. He is the one who created the heavens, stretched them forth, spread abroad the earth, and all that comes out of it. Preserve the people. No. Build that vision, set them. Nope. Defeated foreign kings, built strong cities. Nope. And you should probably put a little tip in there. You can press and hold an option to gray it out and cancel it, so that way you can select the answer that you're wanting to go with. And the explanation in the foundations module is designed to be very objective and not provide any kind of interpretation overlay. That's not the objective of this. I'm not trying to proclaim that my programs and my scripts have designed and created something that provides strict interpretation at all. If you disagree with anything that you see in here, please, by all means, send me a click on the gear icon and go to the report issue and send me an email. I will read it and do stuff. What does Isaiah 42:4 explicitly say the servant will persist in doing until a certain goal is reached? He will not fail nor be discouraged till he have set justice in the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law. He will not rest or be silent. He will not teach or prophecy. He will not reign or be exalted. He will not fail or be discouraged. So that's Foundations is helping take the user through the actual chapter and understand verse by verse what's being said with objectivity. So stepping back out of there, let's take a look at the application. When Isaiah 42:16, my verse, promises, I will make darkness light before them, how should believers today respond when facing life decisions where they feel completely blind and want guaranteed clarity before moving? Trust God's leading enough to obey his revealed will despite remaining uncertainties. Interpret every hardship as a sign that they have missed God's specific guidance? I don't think so. Delay decisions until every detail becomes clear and emotionally comfortable first? No, I don't think so. Rely mainly on expert advice and personal research before considering prayer or scripture? No. So probably that first one. Woohoo! Depicts God personally guiding the blind among the unknown ways, which is up for different interpretation based on how you want to read it. Different kind of a modern culture take on it, and some other details to it. Good fun. Then 42:12 commands, let them give glory unto Jehovah and declare his praise in the islands. How should believers respond to a culture that treats public God talk as intrusive or inappropriate in pluralistic spaces? They honor others respectfully, yet still speak God's praise openly, refusing to meet glory to fit norms. They focus on silent witness through ethics, letting actions speak instead of verbal praise. They restrict explicit praise to private worship, honoring public norms or religious neutrality, or they replace direct God talk with generic spirituality, avoiding specific praise that may offend. The applications module, honestly, is very difficult. Well, not very difficult. Let's say moderately difficult, because how I've designed the script is it will semantically reduce each verse and then pull in a modernization aspect and then reanalyze and develop these variations. And I designed it so that the distractors are really difficult to pick out. I honestly don't know what the right answer is, so here it is. So I'm just going to randomly pick one. So the yellow one, which I selected, is wrong. So this script is outputting. It says that they honor others respectfully, yet still speak God's praise openly, refusing to mute glory to fit norms. I actually like that. And the explanation will go into more details here to provide that substantiation for that analysis or interpretation. Which, if you disagree with the interpretation, yeah, I know, I need to go to sleep. Uh, if you disagree with the interpretation, send me an email. I welcome the discourse, and I mean, I talk to myself all the time. It's actually kind of fun to talk to other people. So it kind of runs through and gives that analysis there. So whole bunch there on the application. History module is one of my all-time faves. Which historical cultural practice best clarifies the gentle imagery, a bruised reed will he not break, and a dimly burning wick in verse 3? Which, when I was reading through, that's one of the ones I really like. I like that 42:3. Is it pre-exilic Judean royal assertions that sometimes relied on displays of strength with less emphasis on protecting fragile outsiders? I'm not sure. Neo-Babylonian military campaigns that trampled opposition, treating conquered peoples as expendable and easily discarded resources? That don't seem right. Assyrian terror tactics, famously boasting of crushing rebels like chaff and devastating lands without sparing vulnerable natives. Persian-era portrayal of benevolent governance, where an ideal royal agent tends the weak rather than crushing already damaged subjects. What's this other one? Pre-exilic Judean royal assertions that sometimes rely on displays of strength with less emphasis on fragility. That's definitely not it. It's gotta be that one. The images of a bruised reed and a smoldering wick evoke people or communities already damaged or near extinction. The servant's refusal to break or quench them suggests a form of governance that protects and restores the weak. In the Persian period, official ideology often celebrated the king as a benefactor who cared for subject peoples, rebuilding temples and communities after war and exile. Neo-Babylonian campaigns, by contrast, were marked by harsh sieges. This is why I love the history module script I've designed. Neo-Babylonian campaigns, by contrast, were marked by harsh sieges and deportations, with little concern for the frail among conquered populations. The Assyrian royal inscriptions explicitly boasted of crushing enemies and devastating lands, imagery opposite to preserving bruised reeds, and then the pre-exilic Judean royal rhetoric at times emphasized strength and security for Israel without the same focus on nurturing the weak among wider nations. The Persian ideal of a benevolent imperial agent thus best illuminates a servant who carefully preserves the vulnerable rather than exploiting or discarding them, matching the tender metaphors in verse 3. I really like that. Which historical backdrop best explains the promise that the servant will set justice in the earth while the isle shall wait for his law? I'm gonna bet you it's pretty close to Persian again, but I love reading why. Yeah, it is the Persian one, which is kind of a cheat, but the verse of justice being established in the earth and distant islands waiting for servants' law under the Persian Empire, authority extended from the Near East toward the Mediterranean and beyond, which brought in a lot of the islands. So that's pretty interesting. So that's the fun one. I like history for that because it teaches in the explanation a lot more about kind of the context in that time period from which it was written, from what we know. And then we've got the theology, the pastoral, the canon, and the languages. So let's look at the theology. When Isaiah 42:17 declares that those who trust in graven images and say to molten images, "Ye are our gods," shall be turned back and utterly put to shame, what doctrinal boundary about redemption and idolatry is being drawn? They shall be turned back, they shall be utterly put to shame, that trust in graven images, that say unto molten images, "Ye are our gods." Redemption excludes rival trusts by exposing idolaters' hope as publicly shameful. Redemption concerns inner feelings only and ignores public worship practices. I don't think so. Guarantees honor to all religious. Nope. Tolerates idols as long as. Nope. Here's that first one. That's right. Then 42:2's description will not cry, lift up his voice, or cause it to be heard in the street, What boundary does this set for understanding how God's redemptive grace works through him? Advances by stirring violent agitation to overthrowing? Nope. By withdrawing from all public engagement and remaining hidden? Nope. Advances only through dramatic public displays of overwhelming power? Nope. Instead, grace advances through gentle, restrained authority rather than through noisy self-assertion. Yes, I completely agree. Absolutely. So that's the theology. Tons of stuff in there. Pastoral. Pastoral module is for pastors, seminary students, or anyone who's like leading a Bible study group of, okay, well, let's talk about this one. And let's see if this is how my scripts have actually executed. When preaching to a congregation that prefers a gentle, non-confrontational Jesus, how should Isaiah 42:13 recalibrate their view of the Lord's zeal and warfare against his enemies? Refresher 42:13. Jehovah will go forth as a mighty man. He will stir up his zeal like a man of war. He will cry, yeah, he will shout aloud. He will do mightily against his enemies. So proclaim the Lord's warrior zeal as loving protection for his people, not embarrassing aggression, probably. Downplay the warrior imagery as ancient hyperbole, centering exclusively on themes of inner peace. It's not too far off either. Split testaments by assigning divine warfare to the Father while keeping Jesus purely non-confrontational. I don't think so. Treat divine warfare as merely symbolic of personal struggles, avoiding talk of real judgment or names. I don't think so. It's one of those two. I'm going to go with that one. Haha. Portrays as a mighty man, stirring up his zeal like a man of war. Confrontation. Many congregations shaped by therapeutic and conflict-averse cultures are uncomfortable with a God who fights. They prefer a purely soothing Christ and feel embarrassed by warfare imagery. The pastoral challenge is to show that God's zeal and warfare are expressions of covenant love, not divine temper. Faithful preaching will connect this zeal to God's commitment to defend the oppressed, overthrow idolatry, and finally remove all that destroys his people. Rather than apologizing for the imagery, you reframe it as good news for victims and a sober warning for unrepentant enemies. Concretely, you can apply this to spiritual warfare, systemic injustice, and final judgment, emphasizing the same Lord who gently restores all passionately confronts evil. Isaiah 42:13 calls the church to worship Christ, who both carries lambs and triumphs over his foes. I like that. So that's the pastoral module, and we're already at 23 minutes here, so we've got 2 more modules left to go, and I haven't even answered all the questions here. So there's a lot of content here and a lot of Bible studies. So probably going to be making a whole bunch more videos as I study more and more. And I'll wrap up. After we go through these other 2 modules, there's some other geeking out stuff that I want to do. So we've also got the canon module, which canon module is about, well, we'll see what it's about. When communities preserved Isaiah 42:2, it's about when Bible was accepted as canon and cemented in that way. When communities preserved Isaiah 42:2 with the triple negation, he will not cry, nor lift up his voice, nor cause it to be heard in the street, what canonical priority best explains maintaining this restrained portrait of the servant rather than emphasizing public power and spectacle? Is it prioritizing a theology of ecstatic prophetic frenzy, presenting the servant's missions as his divine... Oh, Fred, come on, baby. I know. It's time for sleep, and you're getting cranky. It's okay. Just cope with me for a little while longer. I don't think it's that first one. Then we've got prioritizing a theology of quiet, non-coercive authority, presenting the servant's missions as gentle and unobtrusive rather than driven by loud public display. Yes. Prioritizing a theology of civic rhetoric, presenting the servant's mission as chiefly about persuasive speeches. Nope. Not a militant royal conquest. No. Yeah. So this module, canon, is about interpreting why it was accepted as canon, as well as why the particular phrasing of that verse was kept the way it was based off of all the different translations and interpretations at this time. Um, so that's the purpose of the canon module. And then the last one is the language, which is, in a bruised reed will he not break? How does translating the Hebrew adjective for bruised as weak instead change the perceived basis of the servant's gentleness? It shifts focus from already damaged. Let's double check the verse. Bruised reed will he not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench. He will bring forth justice and truth. I don't know why that duplicated. That shouldn't be duplicating like that. But I'll investigate that further. It shifts focus from already damaged, vulnerable condition to social insignificance, to legal guilt, to general frailty. Languages is actually one of the harder ones. I'm just curious to see what the answer is. It shifts focus from already damaged, vulnerable condition to general frailty, dulling the nuance of protecting the wounded and near destroyed. So the phrase "a bruised reed" uses a Hebrew passive participle from ratsatz, which is BDB and halat, includes meanings such as to crush, break, bruise. The participle form connotes and the Septuagint renders this with a term like having been crushed. Preserve instance for prayer injury. The languages module is essentially looking at some of the ancient texts and doing some of the more deep dive interpretation modifications and some of the other kind of stuff. This is way beyond my skill set, at least right now, because I'm really tired and I'm starting to fall asleep. So, there's a run through of what to kind of see in the different modules. Some of the other things I'd like to do is similar to this, because this is essentially what I did with my 4216 and my verse study. Is that's how I've designed many of my scripts to semantically deconstruct and analyze many of these biblical verses, and then reconstruct and generate study questions to allow users to better understand the verse. Because if I just read this, yeah, I get it, it's pretty cool, but through these different modules we can look at this chapter in more detail with more driven study questions and all that kind of fun stuff. So some of the other stuff that I am working on is I am working on a Paleo Hebrew and Hebrew study. So I've been teaching myself Paleo Hebrew, which is a lot of fun, but this module will also help users learn the different biblical languages. So Paleo Hebrew, the biblical Hebrew, which is more in the Masoretic texts, with the Greek Septuagint, as well as Syriac, Aramaic, which I want to say those are pretty much the same thing, but not at the same time. And I am not a linguist by any means, but this is my kind of going through the weeds and doing a spaced repetition in order to help teach users these ancient languages and how to actually go back to the source text documents and, for instance, go to the Great Isaiah Scroll in the Israel Antiquities and or the Dead Sea Scrolls Library, look up the actual verse. And I've done this with 4216, where I went and looked at the exact scroll of 4216 of the DSS, and it's, how old is that now? 4,000 years? Is it 4,000 years old? I might be wrong on that number. I mean, we're at 2000, that's BCE, and then I think the Great Isaiah Scroll was carbon dated to be back in like 2,000 years prior to that. So that's in there is a language study. Right now I've put it under archive. That's actually going to be a monster of a module, but it'll be fun. I've actually done a lot more testing on that, uh, and I've actually reconstructed, or not reconstructed, I've developed a whole new type of atomic level model to break down the languages and then reconstruct it in a way to actually teach users how to use it. And then the other thing I wanted to do, and I haven't actually put it into the app yet, is I wanted to start to flesh out the denominations a bit further, especially with Catholic. Catholic right now, it's just all this kind of just this is all informational dump for educational purposes. But what I'd like to do is provide like going into the Catholic and eventually do like a whole timeline of the entire papacy and some of the different papers and uh, what's the word, exhortations, the oh my goodness, all the fun documents that are really heavy, and start to break those down in a way that it helps users digest them and bring them back into relevance. So that's being worked on, as well as I'm tweaking the Wayfinder here to be more helpful and more adaptable to a user who doesn't want to manually deep dive into each part of the Bible, um, but still allow them to do that. And then a number of other things are still in development here, but I'm really happy with where everything has gotten at. So I'm going to be removing the beta tag, and tweaking a few other things that I've been kind of going through and doing my own studies on. And then also I was going to include in the archive a kind of scribal study bit, similar to what I did with the verse study on the website. Um, in particular, one of the kind of interesting offshoots that I've now dived into is very focused in on the biblical archaeology and tracing all the way back into, I think it's the 14th century BCE in Egypt, and the initial mentions of the Shasu of Yahweh and where they were in the Egyptian hieroglyphics, and really pinpointing the origination of Judaism and Christianity as a whole, which has been really fascinating. And that's why I started to design the Paleo Hebrew module, is so that way I could understand the actual ancient texts as they are written, which is very interesting in its own way, because it is more primal as well as more open to various interpretations. So really cool there. And then I've also got a number of other things I need to improve here on the cross-reference module, because that's going to be really important for digging up different stuff. But anyway, so happy where a lot of this has gone. Thanks for sticking around for the past 30 minutes or 33 minutes on the first kind of study session. And I will be updating the links on the website, so that way folks can go in and see that, they got their, that you can download the app and start playing around with it. And by all means, send me an email, tell me what you think, let me know if there's something that you think can improve it further. And I would be more than happy to keep on studying and keep on improving the application to make it even better. Thank you for your time, and have a great evening or great day, whatever it is, and hope to see you again or hear from you. Have a good one.